All right. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome back to LWN Network. We are live tonight. And just a heads up, as I realize tonight's episode can be very sensitive and could be triggering to some of our family and friends, I would like to warn you to proceed with caution. Tonight's conversation could be graphic and is not meant for children. The hashtag Me Too movement is a social movement and awareness campaign against sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and the rape culture. It began in 2006, and when Tarana Burke used the phrase Me Too on social media to share her experiences of sexual assault, the movement gained significant traction in 2017 after numerous allegations of sexual abuse against Harvey Weinstein. Tonight, we will try to respect all individuals who have been victimized by sexual assault and break down the different areas of sexual violence and where it occurs. We will try to help see some of the warning signs and talk about how to protect your family. With that being said, we will be back right after the intro.
We know when to fight and question my life. Countless times I've sacrificed and lost my way. I've been down this road before. I've struggled with the pain when it pours. No one knows how I feel when I have to start again, and there's no one there to save me. Do you know how it feels when your world is gonna end, when I don't have a friend to stand with me? I'm gonna make a comeback. I'm gonna claw my way back to the top. I'm gonna get it all back. My comeback is right there inside. Yeah, I'm gonna make a comeback and rise up this time. My soul and see a graveyard, a crossroads filled with despair and defeat. Look into my eyes and see the haters call my name. Look into my soul and see redemption on its way. The demand is high to risk it all and put it all on the line. I'm gonna take my shot and never stop. I'm gonna swallow my pride and put it all on the line and rise up this time. I'm gonna make a comeback. I'm gonna claw my way back to the top. I'm gonna get it all back. My comeback is right there inside. Yeah, I'm gonna make a comeback. I'm gonna claw my way back to the top. I'm gonna get it all back. My comeback is right there inside, yeah. I'm gonna make a comeback. I'm gonna claw my way back to the top. I'm gonna get it all back. My comeback is right there inside, yeah. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna make a comeback. I'm gonna claw my way back to the top. I'm gonna get it all back. My comeback is right there inside, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Don't have a producer tonight, so I'm having to do all this stuff on my own, and it's a lot of stuff that we got going on here at LWN. But tonight is Wolfpack Sunday. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host with me, Neil, the real deal, the real unwoke. How you doing tonight, brother?
I am doing fantastic, my friend. How about yourself?
Well, my day's been a little bit easier than yours because I've had the last couple days off, and I know that you are really busting your butt to
Busting my ass, man.
provide for your family, and you're out there working. And brother, my heart goes out to you. I know how it is putting in those long hours. So glad that you could join us tonight. This was kind of your topic that you wanted to cover earlier this week. I did a little bit of research and tried to pull up some information for everybody. So we're gonna cover hashtag Me Too, that movement, and we're gonna talk about sexual assault, not just across America but around the globe, and it goes deep. And there's so I'm gonna save some of the political stuff for the very end because there is some political charge to it, and we'll cover that toward the end. But again, this is not a show or a video for children. This is something that I believe is for adults only. Fair warning that it could be very triggering to some people, and you know, my heart goes out to them because nobody, and I mean nobody, should ever have to experience what we're going to talk about tonight, Neil.
I agree. And as you so eloquently put it in your intro, and just giving a brief synopsis of what we're going to be talking about tonight. I couldn't help but to think about the whole this notion of personal responsibility and how important it is. And I think that we're going to touch on that for sure, amongst other various topics surrounding this. But I look forward to getting into it, man.
Well, at the beginning, my monologue, we talked about the Me Too movement. I watched a video today on the lady who actually started the movement and what it meant to her and how it all transpired. And so, it was heartfelt, and I have family and friends who have been affected by this too. And we're gonna talk about women, we're gonna talk about men, we're gonna talk about the children, we're gonna talk about religion, we're gonna talk about the politics of it, we're gonna talk about even maybe wrongfully accused, and I got a little bit of that toward the bottom as well, because there are individuals out there that do become wrongfully accused in certain circumstances. So we want to cover that too. It was also brought to my attention that a lot of the statistics that we're going to talk about don't even cover the individuals, and what I mean by individuals is it could be men or women, because it definitely can be both, that either report and then back off and don't push it all the way through the justice system, or some of them don't even report. So even though we're going to give you guys numbers, they are skewed a little bit one way or the other. So we're going to just go ahead and hit it. So the hashtag Me Too movement gained significant traction in 2017 after a series of sexual assault and harassment allegations against film producer Harvey Weinstein was published in the New York Times. While the phrase Me Too was first used in 2006 by activists, and I might be getting her name incorrect here, it's Tarana Burke. The allegations against Weinstein and subsequent virtual tweet by actress Lisa Milano on October 15th of 2017 propelled the movement into a global action. So, we want to go ahead and start there, and I guess before we get started, let me also say this. I want all the listeners tonight, all our entire audience, this is coming because I know there's probably people out there saying, well, why are two men talking about this? This is a problem with women. Let me tell you something. We are men, and we're going to bring it from a man's perspective tonight. We're also going to bring it from a husband, boyfriend's perspective, brother's perspective, and also a father. I'm a father of 3 beautiful young ladies, and it affects men too. Not only that, but men have also been assaulted in certain cases, and we're going to talk about children where in the religion, little boys are affected more than the girls are, and we'll talk about those numbers. So I just wanted to say that, Neil, before we get started tonight, because a lot of people are probably thinking, why are men talking about this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it all comes down to moral law. I mean, just because I'm not of the respective gender, that shouldn't designate me to not be able to speak about something, especially if it's something as egregious as, SA or grape. So I think this is an important topic. It can come from both a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. I think this conversation should be brought to the forefront. There are victims. There are people who have been infected by this, and I think I would encourage those folks, whoever has experienced anything as as terrible as this, life changing as this, you should go talk to someone. It doesn't serve you or others around you to keep that to yourself. You should definitely talk to someone because that's too much for one person to bear. I mean, it's traumatizing.
Yeah, it is. It's horrible, man.
Yeah.
And my heart, like I said, my heart goes out to people that have been personally affected by it, or even family members that have been affected, because that crushes a mother and a father and the grandparents, and it crushes a lot of people that aren't the ones being assaulted, but it's rough, having to help a child through it, or help a girlfriend through it, or whatnot. And it's something that, as far as punishment goes on that, I'm a man, I'm an alpha, and I feel like eye for an eye. I feel like this is something that
They should be castrated or killed.
well, here's the thing, Neil. I'm going to tell you right now. I worked very, very briefly in the prison system, doing a remodel in a minimum security prison, and this conversation came up with me and a prison guard, because there were people incarcerated,
Right.
with this background, and I somehow we got on the conversation, and we talked about castration, and he said, "Listen, when it comes to the pedophile part of it, they can be chemically castrated, and have done studies on that, where it still doesn't stop them mentally for wanting that stuff." And we're not talking about the pedo part of this tonight. We're only talking about the other part of it, which it's all nasty. It's all horrible stuff. So even the castration part does not stop the drive. Doesn't stop the drive. I think maybe a tree branch would stop the drive.
A tree branch, huh?
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. No, and what really pains me about this entire topic is that you have these malefactors within this movement that will hijack it for their own agenda. They'll subvert the true purpose of the movement, the purity of people, victims who are afraid to come forward because of whatever reason they have, and you have those malefactors within that movement, that organization, that will try to subvert it for their own ends. And I think that's really unfortunate, because it really takes away that voice for the person that's actually going through something like this.
So let's talk about that voice. So, I feel as a man, I feel like every person that comes forward should always be heard.
Yeah.
Right. I know that's part of this movement, is every voice should be heard. And I totally believe, I totally agree with that. I think that there should be investigation followed by any sort of allegations of, hey, me too, something's happened. Right. I don't think that any of that should ever fall on deaf ears or be ignored or looked past. And yeah, there are lots of people out there, I'm sure, that has happened to them personally. They've tried to say something, people have not paid attention, and that's why this movement is so strong. That's why this movement began. Sexual assault is alarmingly common worldwide, including in the United States, where data shows that more than half of all women and nearly 1/3 of all men have endured sexual violence. Sexual assault includes any type of sexual contact or behavior that happens without consent, such as attempt rape, forcing someone to perform a sexual act, and unwanted sexual contact. Now, a lot of this happens in the professional world. A lot of this happens in the political world. A lot of public schools, religion,
anywhere there's children.
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah,
Children are the
and
victims.
here's another major thing, Neil. This is happening when we see people flooding our borders in these caravans of people coming from
There you go.
mostly South America, but they come from all over the world. But a majority of these people crossing our border is coming from South America. You
Yep.
know, and we're not going to get into the trafficking part of that because that's a whole nother show about trafficking. But there is a lot of sexual assault on these caravans as they are traveling from other countries to America, and even when they get to America. And that should be alarming and concerning to all Americans and all people across this globe. If we need to stop this.
So, what do you think about the notion of believe all women? I'm sure you've heard of that mantra. Do you think that there is some credence behind this idea that you should just believe, versus what you had articulated, hear them out, listen to them? Because I believe all victims you should at least listen to them and hear them out. But how is there a distinction between hearing someone out and believing them?
Well, I think this is where it gets dicey. I believe that all women should be heard. All individuals should be heard. I believe they should be believed at first, but on the flip side of the coin, I believe that all people are innocent until proven guilty, right? So yes, they should be heard. Yes, they should be believed. Yes, there should be an investigation done in the allegation, but also that person that's being accused should also be innocent until proven guilty. And we're going to get to the bottom half of the show about falsely being accused and what that can do to anybody's life, because I think that's important to bring up in this topic as well. But every 68 seconds, another American is sexually assaulted. 1 out of every 6 American women have been the victim of an attempt or completed rape in their lifetime. That's 14.8% completed and 2.8% attempted. About 3% of all American men, one in 33, have experienced an attempt or a complete rape in their lifetime as well. So again, this is not just subject to women. Now, of course, women are the biggest component of that. You can talk about Native American women are the highest percentage of what we're talking about tonight. Black women, I think, are just right under them at a close second, and then of course all races here in America after that. But Neil, this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, and I believe that we should be talking to our children about this and how they protect themselves, and not. I guess the biggest thing for me would be, how do I not put myself in a position where I can be compromised? Again,
when you have a society that promotes sexual liberation, do as thy wilt, this promiscuous sort of way of conducting yourself, not thinking about the consequences of your actions. When we have this sort of like hedonistic society that's not pushing for personal responsibility, I think a lot of this would certainly change, or at least there would be a downtick of what we see happening. I'm seeing a case pop up every 2-3 weeks on my phone, either on my Instagram or whatever, on my social media. But I think that this idea of personal responsibility has totally been removed from our vocabulary.
Well, I think some of it is personal accountability. I think a lot of it starts the base at home, how we raise our children, and again, how do we teach them to protect themselves and be not allow themselves to be in that compromising position. I also believe that capital punishment is not strict enough when it comes to capital crime. And I think if we didn't allow these people to live out a life, in prison for the next 30, 40 years, and had a stricter capital punishment where they were made examples of, I honestly believe that could also curve things too. Not allowing open borders can curve this as well. And I don't know. No, it's just
I
man. I
mean,
tell you what,
yeah.
I get upset about even talking about it.
No, but capital. Listen, if we up the ante on capital punishment for these sort of crimes, these heinous acts, I think that you will see a widespread deterrence from this sort of behavior. But unfortunately, like I said, when you have a society that is not that has completely hollowed itself out from what traditional religious values have been completely just uprooted. They've been extracted from our society, and we don't promote these things anymore. Everyone's just pretty much, there's no set way of trying to teach your child to go out there and protect themselves, because you feel as if, hey, just do whatever you can, just stay safe. No, they don't. They need to sit down and have these conversations about, hey, what sort of people you need to not engage yourself with, who you should be, associating with, or don't find yourselves at a party drunk, or doing things like this. Don't avoid situations that can increase the likelihood of things like this happening. And again, this is not to take away from the victims of these crimes. The victims are the victims. That nothing like that should ever happen to anyone. But I do believe a lot of personal responsibility at the home, as you said, parents teaching their kids these things, how to avoid these situations, could really have an impact, as well as up in the ante on capital punishment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are victims out there that have never gone out and done some of the stuff that we're talking about, and they still have been in bad situations, like
Right.
at work.
Yep.
Like there are times at work they're not out there drinking.
Right.
They're good people, and they get cornered, and there's things that happen.
Yep.
And so it's not all just one-sided. I don't want our audience to think that we're just coming in here saying, well, shit, we need to, harder punishment and teach your kids better, and that would cure everything. That's not the case.
Right.
In the U.S. alone, about 21.3% of women, approximately 25.5 million, have experienced completed or attempted rape in their lifetime. This includes forced penetration, attempted forced penetration, and or drug and alcohol affiliated penetrations. So additionally, 1 in 8 adult women, or at least 12.1 million, have been a victim of this type of crime. So we're going to move forward here and start talking about children. Again, this is not a topic for any child to be listening to, in my opinion. This is so outrageous. It is enraging that you just want to, take matters into your own hands. I know that as a father, I've said that many a times. I said, if something happens to my daughter, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. And honestly, I wasn't joking about that, Neil. I've told young men that have dated my daughter that you'll treat her with respect, or you're going to deal with me, and I'm not afraid to go to prison. So as a father, let's talk about that before we get to the numbers in the children's section here of this. Let's instead of just going over numbers and, hey, capital punishment, you're a father. I don't know how many daughters you have. I have 3. And we're both, there's women in our lives, and I have a mother, and aunts and just other family members that are female. Like this is something that, I don't know, it hits you so hard so fast that I think a lot of people don't have time to really think about it, and they do react in a way that you hear about it all the time. Something like this happens, the father or the husband comes in and does something about it, and then he's the one that spends time in prison because he ends the situation. What are your thoughts on that as a father, as a husband? If something like that was to happen to hit your family, are you the type of person that's going to just take matters into your own hands? Or are you going to let justice play itself out? Because me personally, I don't always believe in justice. I see too many people get off of too many things, and it's hard to control that emotion as a father, as a man, and not want to fix the problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's honestly I don't know, I couldn't really answer that question. I mean my instincts instinctually I want to say I would take justice in my own hands, you know. Obviously I want to completely obliterate, destroy whoever would even do anything remotely close to that to my kid. But, you know, my daughter would want me there, you know, through that time. So I don't think that that would I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that question. LW, it's too much to fathom right now. But um, I think that you know, father's job is to protect his children and to arm them with the wisdom to you know, like I said, be responsible and to know that hey, you know, you're there for them and you're not going anywhere. You know, and you know, in the event you know, God forbid something like this has occurred, they can come talk to you. And you know, I think a father would be best suited being there as opposed to going out and you know just going out.
Vigilante, yeah,
Yeah, taking
vigilante.
justice in your own hands. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think what you said, Neil, is profound, and we should be able to be a parent that our child can come to us and be open to us about this. And again, for all of those out there that are listening tonight, and some of you that may have been affected by this, I think what Neil said is more important than my perspective of hang them. You know, in the situation,
right.
your child or your friend or your neighbor or your sister or your whatever is going to need you. They're going to need that support. They're going to need that rock that can get them through these hard times. And it's something that I didn't really think about until we started having this conversation, because as I was doing my research today, all I could think about was no,
Yeah.
not gonna let it get to handcuffs, not gonna let it get to indictments, not gonna let it get to court proceedings. Let's just finish it and then protect the child. And as parents, that I think most of us, that's what we want to do, is protect our child. And it's really, I mean, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. You can't even wrap your mind around this. I want to read this real quick as we shift gears. I want to say thank you to Jeff B for buying us a coffee tonight. Really appreciated.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Let's see what it says here. I don't know. Just a coffee. All right, nothing. But thank you, Jeff,
There you go.
for taking care of that. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 20 boys are a victim of child sexual abuse. Report studies show that 20% of adult females and 5 to 10% of adult males recall a childhood sexual assault or sexual abuse incident. During a 1-year period in the United States, 16% of youth ages. Now this is scary, Neil. This is hitting home because I got one left in the house that's still this age. 14 to 17 years old have been sexually victimized. Now, children are most vulnerable to CSA between the ages of 7 and 13. And,
7 and 13.
7 and 13 years
Right,
old. Man.
tender ages, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That right. That's what I'm saying. At that period of development for children, that would be a psychological blow for the rest of their life. Something like that was to happen to them. So that's why I say it's so very important that parents, at least try to teach certain protection measures, preventative measures, for themselves and for their children. We have to, on a legislative level, call more attention to this issue. Like you were just mentioning about, all these folks, all these all these people, illegal immigrants coming into our country, and the things that they're doing, it blows my mind. It blows my mind how if they had they not even been in our country, this person would still be alive. This person would still have a life. This person would not have experienced such trauma at such depth. But I don't know, man.
Well, I'll have to push back on that a little bit, Neil, and disagree a little bit, because if they're actually leaving that country because this stuff's going on, you know, they're trying to run away from it. And I'm not saying all of them are, but there may be, you know, a few of them that are trying to leave this exact situation in their home country and thinking, hey, I'm going to go to America where it's safe. And unfortunately, that's not always the case, especially when you are traveling to America in a caravan or relying on coyotes to get you here safely.
Yeah.
You know, they're putting their safety in somebody else's hands, trying to get away from maybe some of this in their own countries. And it's horrible. I mean, this is probably one of the worst topics I think I've ever had to cover. And I can feel the energy between you and I feel like it's just getting sucked out of me right now because it's not a cool topic to talk about. But if we don't talk about this as men, and we don't allow ourselves to go there, how are we ever going to talk to our kids about it? How are we ever going to protect our family if this is an off-the-table conversation that we just don't talk about it? Because guess what? It hasn't happened to my family, so let's not talk about it, because if we talk about it, it might happen. Like, this is happening around you and me all the time. There are people that are being affected that we probably know, and we don't even know that it's happening.
So LW, you know, as a father yourself, how do you how would you or prescribe, you know, parents to go about talking about this with their children? Is there a particular age?
I say you start young.
Start young.
I believe that you have to start young on the conversation, because if we as parents are going to keep sexual content from our children because we feel like we need to put them in this bubble and keep them safe and not talk about this stuff until they're teenagers, it's too late. We just seen the numbers between the ages of 7 and 13. We should be talking to our kids at age 4 and 5 about the birds and the bees, and just at least building that base with our children and allowing that open conversation where they feel comfortable coming and talking to us about that stuff. And I think most parents talk to their children about, hey, nobody's allowed to touch you. I remember having this conversation with my 2 oldest daughters. No one's allowed to ever touch you. Nobody's ever allowed to ever bathe you. Like, once they got to a certain age, mommy and I were not any longer allowed to touch them. And we told them that. We said, even mommy and daddy are not allowed to touch you in those places. As you bathe yourself, you are old enough to bathe yourself. And I think you have to start really young, because by the time they get to age 12 and 13, if they don't feel comfortable talking to you about sex, then when are they ever going to be comfortable talking to you about sex? You know, and at a 13-year-old girl at junior high, if things are happening to her in junior high and she's not even comfortable talking to her mother or father about it, how are we ever going to know as parents? So I say the younger the better. Does not mean we need to get graphic, does not mean that we need to. I think as they get older, you know, you explain more. But it starts at a young age, man, and we got to teach them at a young age that there's appropriate touch and there's inappropriate touch, and that's where I believe it starts.
Yeah, this is what I mean by personal responsibility. Insofar as the parents having these conversations, these hard, very crude conversations about, you know, sexual conduct and misconduct. It's really important to have these conversations really young, at least the kids to be able to conceptualize it as you build on that foundation of knowledge. But
let's talk about this real quick, Neil, because I know you're short on time. I'm sorry for cutting you off and trying to move this forward. before we get to the political part of this, let's talk about the thought of women, and there are men that are affected by this too, but obviously more women in the professional field where they're approached by men, and if you want to climb the ladder, there's certain things you have to do to climb that ladder, or they're in the office and there's inappropriate touch or inappropriate comments made to a woman, and again, some men, I don't want to leave the men out because I don't think that's fair either, because that stuff also happens to men, not on a big scale like the women, but it does happen. What are your thoughts on that? So if you've raised your child and we've done the conversations, and they went through high school, they didn't go to parties, they went to college, they were good students, they got a degree, and then they go into the professional world, and then they get approached by their boss, by somebody above them, or even their own coworker. Doesn't even have to be a boss. What are your thoughts on that, Neil? Because that probably happens, I would say a lot.
Yeah, well, this is probably where a bit of my extremism side comes out, where this is why I kind of believe women should not be in the workforce, but we are where we are. In that particular situation, I think that you have to really use discretion, and I think that if there is a moment of pause where you feel you might have been persuaded to do something that it's outside of unbecoming of yourself, or someone made an inappropriate comment, I think that if that causes you to pause, you should sit and reflect on it and think about whether or not this is something that you should report. There are protocols. I mean, in our society and most corporations in that corporate setting, there are protocols, and there should be protocols. And wherein situations like those occur, they have a way of investigating and getting to the bottom of it. So I think that if ever the case where you feel that you might have been slighted in a very inappropriate manner, you should definitely bring that to your superiors' attention. Bring it to your boss. Let them know. At least have that put it out in the open, so that way it doesn't create an uncomfortable environment for you, and you don't even know how much that's going to even impact your ability to function in that setting. So I definitely think you should talk to some your superior, whoever you need to. Don't just keep it to yourself.
It looks like we got about 10 minutes here. Are you good with 10 minutes? You go past 10 minutes?
We're good with 15 minutes.
We're good with 15. All right, let me read this next little section here. The next segment, we're going to talk about politics and politicizing this and what that means. And again, women in politics are also, in a place where they can be abused. And so sexual assaults, politicization stems from its roots in social power imbalances, particularly in the field of women and other. Oh my goodness, the words are getting big tonight.
Don't let the English language kick your ass.
It's kicking my ass. In the migrants, or not migrants, but the smaller groups of people, this can manifest in various ways, including political disclosure, legislation, and even cultural perceptions of victimhood, right? And this is one that kind of triggered me when I started talking about this earlier today and stuff. And so we just discussed that we feel like everyone should be heard, that everyone should be believed, there should be an investigation, and there should also be innocence until proven guilty, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if we're going to believe everybody, then I get frustrated because there are groups of people out there that will believe every allegation that is pushed to a certain side, certain group, we'll say like the right. They'll believe all of that, and people should be investigated and crucified. But yet, when allegations are thrown out there, let's say toward the left, they get swept under the carpet. They're not believed, they're not investigated, and forgotten. So what are your thoughts on that, Neil?
You have to break that down. I'm slow.
Okay, well, I was trying to talk in code, but fuck it, I'll just say
Yeah,
it.
just
So,
lay it out
when
online.
okay, so when somebody like Donald Trump is accused,
There
when
you
somebody
go.
like Pete Hedges
Yep.
is accused, the left gets behind it. They have a whole crusade of people who want to crucify these individuals. Now, I want to be clear to the audience. I'm not saying that they're guilty, and I'm not saying that they're not guilty. I just see a double standard where the right is accused, and then you have the hashtag Me Too and everyone else that it gets on board, and whatever is said is fact, and they want these people crucified. They want them lynched. They want them burned at the stake. They want them incarcerated. They want them to not be able to run for president. They want them to not be able to be Secretary of Defense. But yet, if somebody on the left is accused of the same thing, like let's say Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, there's a number of them that get accused and they're not believed.
Yeah. Yep.
That's where I get fucking pissed. Like,
There you
okay, if we are going to believe everyone and listen to everyone, then it's everyone, not just one side.
Yeah. I totally agree. It definitely appears to be a double standard. I was thinking about the as you were saying, going on your rant. No, I'm just kidding.
I was trying not to do that tonight.
No,
'cause I'm trying not to be
Yeah.
disrespectful to
Right.
anybody who has encountered this in their life.
Yep.
But my frustration is if we're going to protect everyone, then we need to protect everyone,
There you go.
not just a select few that happen to be on one side or the other. We need to protect all.
Yeah, I agree. And the left, I think it's very interesting because on one instant they'll say believe all women. I mean, they'll tout this idea to believe all women. And the right, we acquiesce. Like, of course, we should believe everyone.
We should
But then in turn, when
believe and then investigate and verify.
and believe and trust and verify.
Yes.
That is the creed I think we all should adhere to. But again, the left wants to undermine that equality of justice, innocent until proven wrong. Anyway, they like to undermine that to suit their own purposes, and I think that's I think that ultimately this affects the victims, the true victims, people who've actually gone through this. When you actually hijack the moment, something that's, meant to bring attention to this, you hijack that for your own purposes, and you don't want to have it across the board. And I think you pointed it out rightfully so. This is it's ridiculous, man. I can't stand how Donald Trump gets accused of all this stuff, but I was old enough to remember when Monica Lewinsky, it was all over the news, But we're hush on that though, right? Blows your mind.
Yeah, it definitely blows your mind, and I feel like so they talk about social justice all the time.
Right.
That's their movement. But what about the victim who I feel gets victimized a second time? Because not only did they get victimized sexually, but then they're not believed. Nobody investigates. Nobody pushes the issue because it's the left. And I feel like they get victimized a second time with being forgotten or who cares, And so that's a frustration. So studies show that political views can influence attitudes and judgments about sexual assault, including whether survivors are believed, blamed, or perceived as credible. This bias can even seem in political debates about sexual assault laws and responsible to accusations and the language used in the media coverage. So that's what we're talking about when it's politicized. Of course, one side pushes social justice and every person should be believed. Every woman should be believed, but when it comes to, and that pushes an agenda, it changes the attitudes, it changes judgments and how people would vote. And then in the left's case, they're believed, and in the right's case, they're blamed.
There you
They're
go.
blamed for being the victim. And so that to me is also very frustrating. What's your thoughts on that, Neil?
Well, yeah. Again, I'm a strong proponent of the law. You're equal. You're innocent until proven guilty. I can't hammer that and stress that enough. The victims, of these crimes, everybody should be given a fair shake. Everyone should be given that opportunity to be heard. The left needs to stop playing this double-sided, double-minded game. This sleight of wrist where hey, we're the true victims, and there's no none of this would ever occur to this person here because of their political affiliation. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's insulting. And quite frankly,
Again, it's double victimization, in my opinion.
double victimization. Double victimization. I mean, and everything we discussed earlier. Think about what they have to go through after not, not being heard, and then, like you said, they're forgotten. They're just dust in the wind.
Dust in the wind. In some cases, sexual assault allegations are used for political gain, particularly when individuals in positions of power are accused. This can involve attempts to discredit opponents, shift public opinion, or manipulate the political landscape. Now, I think we've seen a lot of that in the last 8 years with all the different elections and campaigns that have been ran, and they really tried to use that as a tool and weaponized this whole movement in their favor to push their agenda. And that's where I again, I can't say it enough. There are other people that get left behind and are victimized a second time, in my opinion.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Oh, thought I froze there. Yeah, you're right, man. And I'm glad that we're talking about this tonight. Mainly more so because there are children that can be affected by this. And I think more men, men of honor, men of integrity, they need to get on the side of protecting the innocent, and that's what we severely are lacking right now. There's a lot of cowardice today.
I agree. I'm just rolling through one of these articles that I pulled up, and it was saying some of the stats that I was looking at. I'm shifting gears on you again one more time here before we close up with my final segment. But I think it was something like one out of 5 boys, and I'm going to children right now, folks. I'm trying to hurry because I know Neil got in here late and he worked a long day. He needs to get to his family. He needs to get fed and showered and a rest and be able to see his family. So if
Hey,
it
I
seems
feed myself, LW.
if it seems like I'm hurrying just a little bit, it's because I am. But anyway, the numbers when it comes to religious sexual assault is crazy. Where it's one in like 4 boys, especially, and I won't mention the religious sect, but like 1 in 4 boys have been assaulted over the decades, and it's like 1 in 8 girls when it comes to the religious sects that have been assaulted. And so I won't say who I was having a conversation with before the show, but we were having a conversation about this topic, and they said, well, think about it. If you have given your life to the religion and you have vowed to be abstinent, right? Yeah, and you vow a life of not being married, not having sex with not having any of that stuff. Then when all you're around is young boys all the time, I mean, we're all human. We all have needs. We all have desires. And I guess my question to you, Neil, before we get the last little bit here is, do you think that plays a part in the higher number of boys being assaulted in religious sects and sects? It's not X, it's CT or whatever S. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. There's a lot of repression going on, as you said. These men have devoted their lives to sobriety, abstinence, and
Hmm.
naturally, being around young children. And again, you know, sexual misconduct and SA, all that occurs typically where there's children. Where there's children around, you will find high rates of sexual assault and things like that. But I definitely think that for men that are in those situations where they are around young children, it's gonna, yeah. Forgive me, I can't comprehend how someone could desire a young child. I don't understand that. I truly don't. But I definitely think that, you know, it could come from people just trying to repress these very deviant thoughts,
Desires,
desires.
desires.
Yeah.
It's sexual desire. So here, I guess, here's a question, and then I'm going to roll into the final section here. And don't forget final thought tonight, Neil, because I always
Mhm.
like to end on final thought.
Okay.
So let's say the Catholic religion is one of those religions where the priest, they vow to abstinence, right?
Hmm.
So do you think that these numbers would change and maybe there would be more of a normal healthier sex desire if they allowed the priest to be married and to have wives versus them vowing to never take a wife, never have a woman, and be around young boys could that change that? Is that something? I'm not Catholic, and I don't
Yeah.
mean to offend anybody. It's fact that that stuff happens, and not just in the Catholic religion, but other religions too. I chose Catholics because that's like everybody talks about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
do you think that could maybe change things if they did away with that and allowed them to actually have wives?
Yeah, I definitely think it would contribute to alleviating the problem. I think, ignoring your nature is that's quite a feat. I don't think that we're meant to suppress. Well, listen, we're certainly meant to control our impulses. We're certainly meant to be, in charge of our faculties and to conduct ourselves like reasonable people. But to expect someone to commit themselves to a life where their their entire life as a man, I'm a man, and that's a tough, challenging thing to ask of someone. So
Hmm.
I think if they did allow marriage, that probably would add to, excuse me, would definitely lower the chances of this happening. I think so.
Okay. Well, I just a thought I had. I mean, I
No, that's
don't,
a good
I don't,
question.
I don't ever see that really changing or happening
Right,
because
right.
that's part of their agreement. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I just thought I'd throw it out there. So we're gonna roll into the final segment here, and then we're gonna hit final thought. The final segment is there are people out there, and I want everyone, whether you're a man or a woman, to think about this before allegations are made. I believe every person should be heard. I believe that every person should be believed, but then there should be a confirmation through after an investigation is done, the facts come out before anything else happens. But there are individuals out there, and we know some of the stories, right, Neil, where
Yeah.
a man starts dating a woman, decides to break it off. She gets obsessed with him,
Yep.
doesn't like the breakup, and so she
Hmm.
throws allegations out there. Or there could be a drunk situation where a woman has been drinking and things happen and she throws allegations out there. I guess why I brought this up at the very end of the show is not only can victims have their entire lives snuffed from them and ruined, but if there is a innocent person out there that has allegations of sexual abuse thrown at them, once that trigger is pulled, there is no point that is a point of no return. if you are mad at somebody and throw that allegation out there, they're done.
Yep. His reputation.
It's hard for them to get a job. It's hard for them to even live in a certain community, depending on what the size of the community is. So I guess what I'm saying is every person should be heard and believed. But man, be careful. Be careful making allegations, but also if you're the investigating party, law enforcement, you got to be careful who it's coming from, because I feel like both sides should be investigated. And I know maybe that sounds horrible, but you know, the victim should be heard. But what if the victim is somebody who's said this many a times?
There
you know,
you go.
maybe this is an MO for them, something that they just, oh yeah, I just throw that out there. Because men and women, if they're accused of it, can have their entire lives ruined and professionally ruined, and just, I mean, it's a nightmare. So now you can have a different type of victim. Neil, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I want to pose a question to you. Are there laws on the books, whereas if someone, you know, leverages these sort of allegations, they'll be penalized? Like, is there, do we already have laws in place to protect, you know, innocent people who are found to be on the receiving end of this accusation?
I'm sure there is, but Neil, that it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
once that allegation is thrown
It's
out
done.
there, it doesn't matter if
Yeah.
they are found guilty. They are innocent. They are guilty no matter what in the public eye.
Yeah.
You know, that allegation ruins their life. The
Mm-hmm.
best that you could do is, if you were in the professional world and the person who threw the allegation out to you was worth millions, you sue them, get a civil suit, and maybe you'd never have to work again, and you could hide in your closet for the rest of your life. Because you go downtown in a small town with those type of allegations, doesn't matter if it was true or not true.
Yeah.
You're going to be crucified for it. So it's a horrible situation where, and so just so you guys know, here's the statistics for that. So states, while researchers and prosecutors do not agree, researchers, I'll say that again, researchers and prosecutors do not agree, because this is such a small percentage, that the exact percentage of cases in which there are significant evidence to conclude that the allegations were false, they generally agree on a range of between 2 and 10%. But I believe that's 2 to 10% too much. I believe if it's 10% of 100 guys accused, that's 10 gentlemen whose lives out of 100 are completely ruined, or woman. What do you say there, Neil?
I say that a lot of that is underreported as well. I mean, as you said earlier, you know, you can only take these statistics with a grain of salt. I think more and more we see, you know, primarily men, you know, being falsely accused, and you know, they'll just sign an NDA, settle it, and you know, that's it. It's fall by the wayside. But like you said, it's really no coming back after that. It's really hard to recover after something like that happens to you.
Yeah, I know of one person in my 50 years that's happened to, and it totally ruined his life.
Damn.
I mean, I don't even know where he's at anymore. He kind of just fell off the face of the earth. I don't know if he's even still here, because it was a false claim. The girl was infatuated with him. He was older, and he's like, sorry. And so she got drunk one night and made a false allegation. Her father actually was going to end that situation, and he locked himself in the bathroom, wouldn't come out, and you know, it's unfortunate, but it really ruined his life. I mean, here we are 30 years later, and maybe he moves somewhere where people don't know him. I mean, you'd have to, because after that, you know, you wouldn't be able to even rent a house. You wouldn't be able to get a job at the grocery store. So just this is just such an ugly topic tonight. But again, I feel like as men, we need to talk about it, and we need to have those conversations with our family and our friends. So here's the last question, and then I'm going to roll into final thought. We pretty much covered it, so let's just recap it real quick. In your opinion, how do you keep your family safe, hopefully from stuff like this?
Well, as much as I want to say that there isn't it's a one size fit all strategy. I just think it all comes back to the home. Parents are taking the responsibility of teaching the children, of being responsible, protecting themselves, and like you said earlier, teaching them at very young, tender ages about the anatomy, the birds and the bees, things of that sort. And I think parents are best suited in that position to teach these kids, because once they leave us, it's they're in these public institutions where we currently are in the battlegrounds for this very topic, of they feel as if they're responsible for teaching the children. And I think that should not be a duty relinquished to them. It's solely responsible. The parents should be. So that's just one measure. Now, again, there's no real preventative way other than that I can think of.
Yeah,
To
I
arm
agree.
your
I,
kids for this.
I think it starts at home. Let's try to educate our children. I don't even disagree with parents putting their kids in martial arts class and
Yeah.
ways of helping them become a fighter. And in this world, you have to be a fighter or you become a victim, right? So maybe a little self-defense courses for the family is not a horrible thing, especially when you can do it together, and that's something you do together as a family. I think harsher capital punishment could help be a little bit more of a deterrent.
Yeah.
And I think the best advice as a parent that we could give each other is just be involved in your kids' lives. Don't just give them a cell phone and say, see you later. See you when you graduate high school. Be involved. Know where they're at. Know who their friends are. Know where they're going. Know who they're with. Like, be a parent. And I think that's not the answer for everyone, and that's not the cure-all, but it definitely, I think, could help being a parent and being involved in your child's life instead of just giving them a cell phone and saying, see you later. We'll catch you on graduation night, right?
Yeah. And that, being a parent, it doesn't end just because your child turns 18. You're going to still need your guidance. They're still going to need your protection in a lot of ways.
This is one of the shows that I thought might be a good night to have a call in. But after I thought about it today, I thought, man, that could trigger people. And, for them to be able to tell their story, I think is important. But I didn't think tonight would be the appropriate time. So with that being said, let's roll right into final thought here. I know you got to go, and then we'll play the outro. So what's your final thought tonight, Neil?
Well, as always, LW, it's great being back here in the wolf pack with you. And excuse me. I'm really glad that we talked about this, and you brought out the numbers and the stats and everything. But again, there's no real cure all for this. Like LW said, teaching your kids, and that was such a great idea about martial arts and teaching them how to protect themselves. It's fantastic idea. I think I would encourage more parents to even consider that. But bringing attention to this, I think, is paramount, because we're seeing it happen. I'm seeing case by case a lot more frequently happening of these incidents. And I think that if we don't start arming our children with this information, at least making them aware that this is happening, and the likelihood that you may be in proximity to someone experiencing this, or God forbid something like this happens to you, for them to be aware and knowing what to do in that situation is very important. So it's definitely a conversation worth having. And I'm sure that we'll have more diving into this going forward.
Absolutely. This is going to be my final thought to our audience tonight. Man, just be there for people. I think Neil really hit that nail on the head tonight when I said I would just end it. And he says, well, I think it'd be more important for me to be there for my family member or friend in that situation. And I totally agree with what Neil said tonight. I think that us being able to have that open communication and that warm embrace for people in need who have become a victim and allow them to have their voice heard, and to help them through those hard times is more important than anything. And so that's going to be my final thought tonight. But thanks for joining us tonight, folks. We will be back next Sunday for another wonderful Wolf Pack as we play the outro on the way out, or the intro. I think I got them mixed up. But Neil, brother, thank you so much. As always, really appreciate
Been a pleasure.
You being a co-host here, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Thank you, LW. Thank you, chat, for sticking it out with us. I know this was a tough one tonight, but we'll catch you guys later.
All right. Thank you. We'll catch you on the next one.
Peace. Peace.
You can see it in the sky. No use running, if you do, you won't survive. People are sick and people are tired, but inside of me rages a fire. We the people are going to burn this corruption to the ground. Yeah, we the people will fight fire with fire starting now. Going to burn this corruption to the ground. Yeah, we the people will fight fire with fire starting now. Gonna watch them run, gonna watch it burn, gonna watch it all come down. Yeah, we the people are gonna burn this corruption to the ground. Yeah, we the people will fight fire with fire starting now.